Shalom, my name is Robin and I have the privilege of being on staff with Chosen People Ministries serving in the Holy Land, Israel. I wish I could be in New York City with you all this weekend, but COVID travel restrictions, we decided to record this video at a very special place instead. The Twin Towers were completed when I was in the second grade. I was part of a school trip that got to go to the top. I remember being so excited to be at the top and to see the view. Over the years, I'd meet friends who worked there for lunch. I loved to sit in Washington Square Park's arch, where one could see the Empire State Building in one direction and the World Trade Center the other. They were an iconic part of the skyline I grew up with. 20 years ago, I remember where I was. On that morning, I was working in Midtown Manhattan. I was in a staff meeting when a knock interrupted and someone said a plane just hit one of the Twin Towers. And Robin, your sister, called. She's okay. My sister worked across the street from the Twin Towers. Her office, which would soon be destroyed by the contents of the falling towers coming through the windows, had a view of the towers. Several minutes later, another knock. A second plane hit the next tower. We all left the meeting. The unimaginable continued. The Pentagon is hit, the South Tower collapses, hijackers down a plane in Pennsylvania, the North Tower falls. The cell phones were jammed and down, and I hadn't heard from my sister since the first plane hit. I went to someone's apartment to be near a landline, waiting and hoping for that phone to ring. Each minute felt like a lifetime until the call came. She made it out. She was about to cross the bridge of Manhattan. I walked the bridge to meet her. I've never seen a look of such horror, fear, and pain as I saw on her face that day. I hugged her harder than I've ever hugged anyone, and I'm always thankful I got that call. I'm ever aware that for each name on this memorial, there are family and friends that did not receive the call. Though I was not living in Israel when this happened, I know many of my Israeli friends remember this day as well. It was a day when America experienced what Israelis experience almost every day. For decades, terrorist groups have targeted Israel. Their goal is to create fear, weaken the nation's resolve, and ultimately to wipe out this country's very existence. In 2001 alone, 40 bombings occurred, killing hundreds of Israelis. So when Israel heard about the attacks on the World Trade Center and Pentagon, they immediately sprang into action. The government declared September 12th a day of mourning. Emergency blood drives were held throughout Israel. Magen David Adom, an ambulance service, flew the American flag on all their vehicles. On an emotional level, Israelis empathized with the shock and horror Americans experienced that day and grieved alongside them. They mourned the suffering of the victims, as well as the first responders and grieving families. Israel and the United States have always been allies. America acknowledged the State of Israel the very day they declared independence in 1948. We stand united over shared values such as freedom and peace. 9/11 has only deepened our partnership. From that day forward, we shared a new bond, and we had a new common goal: opposing terrorism. Encountering terrorism firsthand increased American sympathy for the violence Israel experiences on an all too regular basis. Americans had a heightened awareness of the measures Israel takes to combat terrorism and developed a greater openness to learning from them. Likewise, the United States assisted the Israeli military in engineering the Iron Dome, a defense system that detects incoming rockets and fires missiles to eliminate them before the impact. This technology has protected Israel on several occasions, including the thousands of rockets Hamas fired at Gaza just a few months ago. One symbol of the lasting effect of 9/11 on Israel is the 9/11 Living Memorial Plaza in Jerusalem, which lists the name of every individual who died in the terrorist attacks. This list is nearly 3,000 people, including 5 Israelis, as well as citizens from dozens of other countries. The memorial was designed by artist Eliezer Weishaupt and dedicated by the Jewish National Fund in 2013. The main sculpture depicts the American flag morphing into flame Encased in the sculpture's base is a metal shard from the foundation of one of the Twin Towers. This memorial is a sign that Israel still mourns this day and stands against acts of terror wherever they may occur. The events of 9/11 showed the world just how devastating terrorism can be. Israel, however, already knew the destructive potential of suicide bombings. Perhaps more than any other nation, Israel could relate to what Americans felt in the days following 9/11. 20 years later, terrorism still threatens peace in Israel and around the world. These are difficult times, but God is at work in Israel and throughout the Middle East. As we remember the past and better understand the present, let us continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We know that God desires all people be saved. We know that Jesus will return to Jerusalem and establish a reign of justice. We know that God wins. Today we grieve the loss that 9/11 caused, but we do not grieve without hope, because no tragedy, no terrorist, and no act of violence can stop God's purposes here in Jerusalem and around the world.